Well, good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Boy, do I need my coffee this morning. I wish I was in my man cave having my coffee because I need it. We were working last night till 10:30 at the Red Brick House, and I couldn't sleep. But you know that it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because we are talking about the Dallas Cowboys, something I do on a daily basis. Probably get some people just tired of hearing about it, but when you love something, you talk about it. And I truly love the Dallas Cowboys. And so, going through, of course, this is that lull where GMs hold their breath because you hope that nobody gets in trouble, that nobody has an off-season incident where they're slicing a bagel and they slice their hand, or they're trying to catch their cell phone around the pool and they break their elbow and things like that. You just hope that everybody gets to camp healthy and that everybody who's rehabbing, that you hope that they're ahead of schedule by the time they get there with their injuries. Somebody like Terrence Steele. So the Cowboys, looking at pro football folks, skip, 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 skip. And then there's no more Shannon Sharp saying skip, 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 skip anymore. Just not. Um, just not happening anymore. And it's looking like Shady McCoy. So you know what that show's going to turn into. Yeah, that's going to be the Dak Prescott hate show coming to a FX1 near you. Anyway, be that as it may, Skip, the boys at Pro Football Focus, they watch a lot of football. And Pro Football Focus has the Dallas Cowboys offensive line ranked sixth again, the same spot that they had last year. What's funny about this with the guys at Pro Football Focus is I believe it was the end of the 2020 season that they actually had the Cowboys ranked first on their offensive line. And that was a year that we had like Lyle Collins only played a few games, and you had Tyron Smith miss time. You looked at that offensive line, and there's no way, no how that you thought that they were the best offensive line in football. That's when you literally said, "Are you smoking crack?" Because they weren't anywhere close to that. So having a six. Now let's take a quick gander at the teams that they have ahead of us. Now, I know that offensive lines don't matter when it comes to quarterbacks, of course. That it just doesn't matter. But they have, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles number one on the offensive line. And it's hard to argue with that because they have been great. And a great offensive line really helps out your quarterback. It really does. Best player, of course, Lane Johnson, who, I don't know how he made it to the playoffs playing through there with the strained groin muscle and I mean, just everything down there just tore up. Then they have the Cleveland Doo-Doo Browns. Their offensive line not quite as doo-doo. Kansas City. Oh, wait a minute. You mean the two Super Bowl teams are top three in the offensive line? Wow. I thought the quarterbacks just did it on their own. Apparently, it does help. Then they had the Baltimore Ravens at number four. And then the Lions. And you have to look and say, okay, the Lions' offensive line was better definitely last year, and that definitely helped the quarterback, Jared Goff. Things like that do matter. And then, of course, we have the Dallas Cowboys. As their projected offensive line starting, Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz at guard, um, Tyler Biadasz at center, Zach Martin at right guard, and Terrence Steele. Now, on paper, and this is where it says, Dallas gets multiple players back from injury, even if the specter of getting hurt is never far from Tyron Smith at this point in his career. Dallas line began last season at number 6 before injuries caused it to slip, but the talent belongs this high. So they're basically saying that on paper, if these guys stay healthy, they are one of the best offensive lines in football. And it's hard to argue that. If Tyron Smith is Tyron Smith and can play a whole season at left tackle, yeah, that makes a major change. But he ended up playing right tackle when he finally came back after missing, 11, 12 games last year? So, and he wasn't as effective as a right tackle. Then you lost Terrence Steele. Terrence Steele, of course, had become a really good um, right tackle. But you lost him for like the last 5 games of the season. And then we had basically the revolving door at guard, from Jason Peters and Connor McGovern, who never lived up to the expectations that they had for him and things. And so that spot was never really, solidified. So, yes, they started out, you said, yeah, Tyron Smith, Tyron Smith at tackle and Tyler Smith at guard and everything. Yeah, that looked great. But that's not how it worked out. If Tyron Smith does stay healthy, and if Terrence Steele comes back 100%, yes, that will be a great offensive line. But there's so many things that you have to worry about. Like we said, Tyron Smith has not had a full season since 2015. Terrence Steele is coming back from the dreaded ACL. We always project and say, oh, he's going to be ready. But ready and playing at the same level before the injury are two different things. And we're hearing word that he may not be ready to start training camp, that he may be on the PUP list. So those are some things to worry about. I still worry about it. Now, the good news is they feel good about Matt Lewinsky as the guard. If it ends up being that Terrence Steele is not ready, then we've already been working Tyron Smith at right tackle. Tyler Smith will stay at left tackle, and then you end up having Matt Lewinsky, who is tall, like 6'8". Dak says it's hard to see over that guy, which actually might be good for Deuce Vaughn because people won't find him behind Matt Lewinsky and those guys. So you start thinking about Biadasz. He should be, now that he's had several years of starting, should becoming a much better center. And so, yes, I feel cautiously optimistic about the Cowboys' offensive line and hopeful, but you're going to have to go ahead and pray that injuries don't get us. For me, I look at the team and say, get Dak Prescott's deals done. Get yourself some extra cap room. Looks like DeAndre Hopkins may be signing with New England, and I don't think the Cowboys will be doing any kind of major moves. I think the Cowboys look at it and say, we have brought back a great core of people. We've got Stephon Gilmore. We got Brandon Cooks. We got a good drafted class. We are where we need to be. Well, they'll add some more smaller pieces. They're not going to make major moves. But if they do that, along with the $20 million that they have, I would look around and see what is the best backup swing tackle, potentially starting caliber offensive lineman that you can get. That is just like an insurance policy for Tyron Smith and Terrence Steele. Unfortunately, tackles, the question marks that you have right now, are at both tackles, and that worries me. Interesting piece I heard this morning on the Rich Eisen show. Tom Passero was actually on there, and he was breaking down the Dallas Cowboys season. And I want you guys to listen to what he has to say. This is actually very interesting, and it's actually well thought out as opposed to just what you usually get with the ass, that, this, that, and the other.
Ever since Mike McCarthy got to Dallas, he's a big believer in you build through the draft, you reward your own, you don't thrive on free agency. Wants to be more balanced than they were for a long time in Green Bay, where Ted Thompson, the late great Ted Thompson, basically eschewed free agency entirely, other than a few spot signings here and there. Charles Woodson. There were years would go by, and they wouldn't sign a single unrestricted free agent because of the comp pick formula, because they wanted to reward their own guys. Mike wants balance, but he wants to build through the draft. For them to execute 2 significant trades in one offseason and not give up that much, I think was really important for them.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in Stephon Gilmore, who's still playing at a high level, he wanted to get to a place that he had an opportunity to win, burnish his legacy, show that he can still perform at a high level. The Colts are going to be in transition. Chris Ballard was willing to work with Gilmore. Trades him to Dallas for, I believe it was a 5th-round comp pick. You now have him opposite Trayvon Diggs. You get Brandon Cooks, also on the cheap, who you now are able to plug into a really talented wide receiver core where you hope Michael Gallup is a year better now that he's a year further removed from the ACL. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is a really good young player. He'd be the talked about guy in that draft class if Justin Jefferson weren't also in that draft class. And they've got, talent in the backfield. Zeke's gone. It's going to be more Tony Pollard. They like the young kid that they drafted out of Kansas. Deuce Vaughn. One of the great stories of that draft. And with Dak, you're hoping that, he avoids some of the injury hiccups that they had last year through the course of camp. And then obviously he gets hurt right at the start of the season and misses time. They won a bunch of games with Cooper Rush last year. Mike McCarthy should have been a Coach of the Year candidate last year instead of having to hear the annual calls for they should fire him and go after Sean Payton and the other nonsense. No, I think the Cowboys are in a great position. They're in a challenging division. I said it yesterday, and you guys immediately jumped on me that they may have the most talented roster in the NFC East. That's taking nothing away from the Eagles. But the Cowboys are a very talented team. They got a really good D coordinator in Dan Quinn. It's going to be Mike McCarthy's offense this time around. Mike, as a play caller, is one of the best in the NFL. He's got the track record to show that. Regardless of who the quarterbacks have been, you look at the productivity, you look at the games that they've won, you look at the number of different pieces that came through Green Bay over the years, Mike knows how to call a game. And he's still been doing it. Mike would still show up at the stadium way early. He doesn't do, wasn't doing the full thing with his play sheet and whatnot, but he was still going through and doing it like he was a play caller, thinking through different things. He'd show up at the stadium 6 hours before kickoff. He wanted to go through it. Now he's back into actually doing this and having this be his offense the way he wants it to run. They're not flipping the terminology because they want to keep things simplistic for Dak. But I have every reason to believe that this is going to be a really good Dallas Cowboys team. They'll have the same pressure that they always do because everybody talks about them. Whether you're talking about them because you like them or whether you're talking about them because why are we talking about them? Stop talking about the Cowboys.
I feel that way a lot of times, Tom, by the way. But, my thing is, I like Tony Pollard. I think he's done well. But 5 months after, breaking his leg, I'm just wondering, man, how that's going to translate. Is he going to be ready? And then when you see a back of Dalvin Cook's caliber who's out there looking for a job, I'm like, every year Jerry Jones talks about wanting to win a Super Bowl and, wanting to remake a deal with the Lord that he made back in 1992. If you're really serious and you've got a Dalvin Cook out there and you've got a starting back who is coming off of a pretty severely snapped leg, in my opinion, you got to roll the dice, man. You got to throw them on the table, bring Dalvin Cook in.
The issue with Dalvin, it's going to be the money.
The money.
The Cowboys have a lot of resources out there. They've got young guys they want to take care of. I don't see that being a fit. I mean, I think it makes perfect logical sense, but they drafted Deuce Vaughn for a reason. They do like Pollard. They are optimistic in terms of his recovery. He's going to be good to go. They haven't been afraid to pay people coming off major injuries either. They paid Gallup last year. Obviously, he was not quite all the way back when he got back. They paid Dak a couple years
why
ago.
I'm a little worried about Pollard because it seems now that these guys come back from injury, it seems like it's going to take a full season to recover.
Yeah.
I think that there's a much higher percentage chance, and I'm not saying this because anyone has told me this, but I would say, logically speaking, there's a much higher percentage chance of signing one of the other running backs that are out there. Dalvin's simply going to be the most expensive. He's going to have the most competition for his services. There's other guys like Leonard Fournette, who we had on the show yesterday, Kareem Hunt. There's other guys who are sitting out on the market right now that I think probably have a better chance to end up being the fit for Dallas just because the price point's going to be different.
Okay, but would you agree or disagree that maybe looking at bringing in one of those guys might
you
not
really want the Cowboys to sign a running back, don't you, TJ?
I just, like I said, I like Pollard, but coming off that injury, I don't know what he's going to look like. No one really knows
that's
what he's
the thing.
Look like. And I pray, obviously, that he turns into the guy that we all hope he can be, but I just don't know.
I mean,
He's
listen,
had injuries
there's always
in
running
past.
backs sitting out there. There's always running backs every year. I mean, look at the guys who have signed off the street. Like Latavius Murray, 2 or 3 years in a row, was just sitting out there, didn't have a job, and then he comes out and runs for 100 yards for somebody. He's currently under contract with the Bills because he had a pretty good season once he landed in Denver last year after they signed him off the Saints practice squad where he had just had a 100-yard rushing game for a different team.
We'll talk now, not to interrupt, but now going back to our conversation that we've had, is that the reason why this running back position seems to be undervalued now? Because you just got done saying there's so many of them sitting out there, so is that why?
That's part of it, and there's a volume of running backs in the draft every year. This was a pretty good running back draft. You can get those guys on cost-controlled deals early on. Even where Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson were drafted, you're still paying half what Christian McCaffrey's getting by drafting those guys up there. It's resources. It's a high draft pick, but absolutely that depresses some of the market. And the fact that there are those veterans. I mean, there's guys who are coming in on like minimum deals, or in Murray's case last year, a practice squad deal with the Saints, and he comes out and he's a savvy vet, and he can still run, and he can come out and he can give you the productivity. So Dalvin Cook, in my mind, is the one who's in a different category because he is a difference maker, because he is consistent, because he can do a lot of different things for you. That's why he's the one who's going to get money out in the free agent market. The other names that are sitting out there right now, I think are going to have a harder time. Somebody's going to offer Leonard Fournette some money.
Some good players out there. You're right, though.
Right. Yeah. Kareem Hunt, somebody's going to sign him at some point here, but it's probably not going to be at the absolute top of the market because it's June 14th, and that money in that market went away back in March, absent a really rare opportunity. I mean, how many times have you had a 4-time Pro Bowl player, guys made the last 4 Pro Bowls, come off 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, is a free agent in June? It's like the biggest thing gets for NFL free agent stories at this time of year. That one's just in a different category. Everybody else right now who's sitting out there, they're sitting out there because they haven't gotten their number yet. And that number, generally speaking, sometimes there's injuries, and sometimes you can wait, and that's going to be fortuitous for you. But generally speaking, if you haven't gotten your number by now, that number's not coming, and you eventually have to decide, am I going to wait for an injury? Am I just going to sit and conserve my body and wait till somebody gives me that number because they are in a bind? Or do I take the best offer I can get, the best fit I can get, and try to do better next time around?
And that's the truth. And that's unfortunately where DeAndre Hopkins is right now. Right now, that money is just not here, in June. That money has been spent. And so now you got to look and say, what is the best deal that I can make right now? And maybe you look at shorter term deals because the money's just not there. I will be surprised if Dalvin Cook gets more than $10 million. I honestly will. I just don't see that happening because, again, the time of year, most people have already blown their wad, and most teams have already pretty much started game planning for the season. So we'll see what happens with these guys, but unfortunately, running backs, they've got a hard way to go. Optimism for the Cowboys. Well, I like the way he served that up. He did make some very, very valid points about the Cowboys, and sometimes having those same guys in the system year after year ends up helping make it more cohesive of a team than when you have a whole lot of new players that come in. We'll see how it works out, and as always, I appreciate you. Time for me to go to work over at the Red Brick House. Peace.